Blood, smoke, and the sound of engines in the night. When Emma Shaw opened the curtain in bay for that night, she expected another wounded stranger. She didn't expect him. The man whose voice could command an army, and whose touch would shatter the life she thought she knew. One moment she was just a nurse stitching a wound. The next, 200 men surrounded her home, and her heart was caught between danger and desire. He called himself Salvatore Russo. To the world, a Mafia king. To her, a man bleeding from his body and maybe from his soul. And when fate forced her into his world of shadows, one truth became clear. Sometimes the most dangerous wounds aren't the ones you can see. Before we begin, if you believe that danger can awaken destiny, make sure to subscribe. It's free and helps us share more stories from Desire Tales. The night shift at Mercy General always smelled the same antiseptic over the metallic tang of blood, stale coffee, and desperation. After 3 years as an ER nurse, I'd grown used to it. But tonight, the smell of copper was stronger, clinging to my scrubs despite the careful hand-washing ritual between patients. Emma, you're up. Curtain 4. Dr. Patel slid a chart across the counter without looking up from his phone. My shoulders ached. 12 hours had stretched into 16, and exhaustion pulled at my bones like gravity. Rent was due in 3 days and my bank account balance mocked me. Saying no wasn't an option. What is it? I asked, flipping through the notes. Male laceration, possible GSW. He's refusing to see a doctor. GSW, gunshot wound. Patel finally looked up. Just clean him up and get him out. The waiting room's backing up. I nodded, gathered supplies from the cart, and headed to Bay 4. Another Friday night. Another parade of drunks and fights. The curtain was drawn tight, unusual for our overcrowded ER. I knocked twice on the metal frame. Hello, I'm Emma, your nurse for tonight. Silenced, I pushed the curtain back a few inches and froze. 3 men occupied the small space. 2 stood on either side of the gurney, motionless, wearing identical black suits despite the summer heat. Hands clasped in front of them, sunglasses on at 2 a.m. under fluorescent lights. But it was the third man who drew my gaze like a magnet. He sat on the edge of the bed, back straight, one hand pressed to his side where crimson bloomed through an expensive white shirt. His jacket, probably worth more than 6 months of my rent, was folded neatly beside him. I requested a doctor, he said. His voice was low, accented Italian maybe, or Russian, smooth like aged whiskey with an undercurrent of gravel. I'm sorry, sir, but I'm what you've got tonight, I replied, stepping in and letting the curtain fall behind me. I assure you, I'm fully qualified to treat lacerations. He looked up and I nearly stepped back. His eyes were the color of Arctic ice, pale blue, almost colorless under the harsh lights. Handsome, but in the way predators are handsome, beautiful only because they're dangerous. Leave us, he said. For a moment I thought he meant me. But the 2 men exchanged glances, then obeyed without hesitation. When they were gone, silence filled the small room again. I need to see the wound, I said. That he studied me with clinical precision, dissecting me with his gaze. Your hands are shaking, he observed. That I looked down. He was right. I curled my fingers into fists. 20-hour shift. Nothing coffee won't fix. Something like amusement flickered across his face there and gone in an instant. You should take better care of yourself, he murmured. Coming from the man bleeding all over my exam table? The words slipped out before I could stop them. Instead of anger, that ghost of a smile returned. He began unbuttoning his shirt with one hand, the other still pressed to his side. When he struggled with the third button, I stepped forward. Let me. His hand shot out, fingers circling my wrist completely. His touch was warm, surprisingly so, his skin smooth except for the calluses I felt against my pulse. The contact sent a jolt up my arm. What's your name? He asked. I told you. Emma. Emma Shaw. Emma Shaw. He repeated it slowly, like tasting the syllables. You're not afraid. It wasn't a question, I said. But I'll answer anyway. I've treated gang members, drug dealers, and drunk businessmen who think their money makes them untouchable. You're just another patient. He released my wrist, leaned back slightly. Then treat me, just another patient. I finished unbuttoning his shirt. The wound was a clean slice along the ribs deep, but not enough for surgery. Next to it, an older bullet scar. This needs stitches, I said. What happened? Does it matter? It helps me determine infection risk. Knife wounds and broken glass carry different bacteria. Knife, he said finally. A very clean knife. I cleaned the area, working methodically. His torso was lean, olive-skinned, marked with scars, surgical and otherwise. This will sting, I warned, applying antiseptic. He didn't flinch. Didn't even blink. I don't need that, he said when I picked up the syringe. It's standard procedure for no needles. Something in his tone made me set it aside. I threaded the curved suture needle instead. Then this will hurt a lot. He shrugged slightly. Pain and I are old acquaintances. As I stitched, his eyes never left my face. Where did you learn to stitch so neatly? He asked. My grandmother was a seamstress. She taught me to sew before I could write my name. Life rarely follows the paths we imagine for ourselves, he said quietly. No, I murmured, it doesn't. When I tied the last knot, 17 in total, the curtain rustled. One of the suited men leaned in, whispered urgently in a foreign tongue. The patient's expression darkened. I need to bandage this, I said. Make it quick. You need to keep this dry for at least 48 hours. Change the dressing daily, no lifting, no strenuous activity. The sutures should come out in 10 days. I'll send someone for you. What? No. You can come back to the hospital or see your primary care physician. I don't have a primary care physician. And I don't come to hospitals. He stood taller than I expected, at least 6'3". The air around him seemed to contract. He took out a money clip, peeled off several bills and held them out. I shook my head. I can't take that. You need it. That's not, I can't accept cash from patients. It's unethical. Ethics. He said the word like it amused him. Then he slipped the money, $2,500, into my scrub pocket before I could react. Consider it a consultation fee for your discretion. I should have refused. Should have called security. Instead, I nodded dumbly, the bills burning against my thigh. He slid on his jacket, wincing slightly. 10 days, you said? Yes. And antibiotics. You need? I have my resources. Then, unexpectedly, he reached up and brushed a strand of hair from my face. You look exhausted, Emma. Go home. Rest. Before I could respond, he was gone, the curtain swaying shut behind him. I stood frozen, heart hammering. Only when I turned back to clean the bloody gauze did I realize I'd never asked his name. By the time I clocked out at 6 a.m., the encounter felt like something half-imagined, a fever dream wrapped in antiseptic and adrenaline. The morning air was cool against my face as I stepped out through the staff entrance, the horizon paling toward dawn. I told myself that once the night ended, I'd leave him, that man, behind at my apartment was 15 blocks away. Normally I'd take the bus, but after a night like that, the walk felt like penance and release. 2 blocks from home, I noticed it. A black SUV moving at a crawl along the street parallel to mine. Windows tinted too dark, reflecting the rising sun like liquid glass. I told myself it was nothing, just a coincidence. Then it matched my pace. I quickened my steps. The SUV did the same. When my shabby 5-story walk-up finally came into view, the kind of building that had seen better decades, I almost ran. The SUV pulled ahead, stopping half a block up. No one got out. My keys fumbled in my shaking hands as I unlocked the security door that hadn't been secure since the 90s. Inside, I climbed the stairs 2 at a time, lungs burning by the 4th floor. Once inside my studio, I locked the door, slid the chain and pressed my back against it, heart pounding. Through my single window, I could still see the black SUV parked below. A second one pulled up behind it. Identical. Silent. Watching. Sleep didn't come. I lay on my lumpy futon staring at the ceiling, every sound from the street tightening my chest. The envelope of cash, $2,500 in crisp $100 bills, sat untouched on my rickety coffee table. It was enough to pay rent and buy food for weeks, maybe even fix the heater that had been broken since January. But it felt dangerous, like a tether to something I couldn't see and didn't dare touch. When sleep finally claimed me, it came in fragments. Blue eyes in the dark, hands slick with blood that wasn't entirely his own. The pounding on my door jolted me awake. Sunlight poured through the window. I'd slept through most of the day. The microwave clock blinked 4:37 p.m. Bang. 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 Miss Shaw. Emma Shaw. A man's voice. Deep. Controlled. I froze, pulse racing. I approached the door cautiously, peering through the peephole. Another man in a dark suit stood in the hallway. Different face. Same uniform. Who are you? I called through the door. Mr. Russo sent me. He requires your assistance. The name hit me like ice water. Russo. At least now I had a name. I don't know any Mr. Russo. You treated him last night. The wound on his side. I pressed my forehead against the door, closing my eyes. Tell Mr. Russo to go to the hospital if he's experiencing complications. He sent a car for you. You'll be compensated generously for your time. I'm not going anywhere with someone I don't know to see a man I barely met. A pause. Then the faint rustle of fabric, followed by the soft click of a phone being dialed. He'd like to speak with you, the man said finally. Something slid under the door. A phone. Sleek. Black. Expensive. My fingers trembled as I picked it up. Hello. Emma Shaw. The voice was unmistakable, low, accented, smooth and sharp all at once. I find myself in need of your services again. Mr. Russo, I'm a hospital nurse. I don't make house calls. Yet here we are. There was a roughness beneath the calm, a threat of pain. The wound has become infected. I require antibiotics and possibly new sutures. Go to the hospital. That's what hospitals are for. We both know that's not an option for me. I looked at the money on the table. Why me? You must know other medical professionals. A long pause. Just the sound of his breathing. I trust your hands, Emma. They're steady, even when you're afraid. Something hot and cold flooded my chest at the same time. I could lose my license. No one will know, he said softly. And you'll be helping someone in need. Isn't that what you swore to do? That oath's for doctors, not nurses, I muttered. How bad is the infection? Bad enough that my men are concerned. That meant very bad that I closed my eyes. I already knew what I was going to say before I said it. I need supplies, antibiotics, sterile dressings, suture kits. Already acquired. The car will take you to and from my residence. You'll be home before midnight. And if I refuse? His voice lowered, the softness somehow more dangerous than a threat. Then I'll be forced to find another solution. Perhaps from someone at Mercy General, someone like Dr. Patel. I'd hate for him to face complications for helping me. My stomach turned to ice. He knew names. He knew everything. Fine, I said, the word tasting like surrender. Give me 15 minutes to get ready. Fine, he echoed. My man will wait. The line went dead and I stood motionless, the phone clutched in my hand, the weight of what I just agreed to sinking in. Then, like muscle memory, I moved. Clean jeans. A sweater. Hair pulled into a messy bun. My old medical bag, a remnant from med school I'd never had the heart to throw away, sat under the counter. I filled it with what I'd need, heart hammering all the while. When I opened the door, the suited man was waiting. Expressionless. Silent. Ready? No. But I nodded anyway. He led me down the stairs and out to the street where another black SUV idled. The moment I slid into the back seat, someone in the front turned and slipped a blindfold over my eyes. What the hell? Security protocol, Miss Shaw. Mr. Russo's residence is confidential. This wasn't part of the deal, I snapped, voice shaking. It's non-negotiable. Strong fingers adjusted the fabric over my eyes. We'll remove it when we arrive. I sat rigid as the engine started. The car pulled away, my heart sinking with the rhythm of the road. Each turn, each stoplight erased any sense of direction. The city dissolved around me until there was nothing left but darkness, motion, and the faint echo of his voice in my mind. The car ride felt endless. Every turn blurred my sense of direction until I could no longer tell whether we were still in the city. The smooth hum of the engine gave way to the softer crunch of tires on gravel. Then finally silence. We've arrived, Miss Shaw. Cool air brushed my face as the door opened. The blindfold came off, and the sudden twilight light made me blink. Before me sprawled a mansion straight out of an architectural magazine, clean. Modern lines softened by manicured trees and the glow of evening lamps. A circular driveway framed a central fountain whose water caught the last light of day. The wealth here wasn't ostentatious. It was confident. I stepped out, clutching my medical bag like a lifeline. Men in black suits patrolled the property, some openly armed. Several nodded to me as we passed, silent but watchful inside. The house was even more breathtaking, soaring ceilings, museum-quality art, and furniture that whispered old money rather than screamed new wealth. The air smelled faintly of cedar and disinfectant. The man who escorted me gestured toward a sweeping staircase. Mr. Russo is in the master suite. At the top of the stairs, another door opened into a room larger than my entire apartment. Charcoal gray linens covered an enormous bed positioned before floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out onto a private lake silvered by moonlight. A sleek fireplace flickered at one end, throwing soft light across the polished floors, and there he was, Salvatore Russo, propped against a mound of pillows, shirtless, his olive skin pale beneath a sheen of sweat. The bandage I'd placed the night before was stained yellow and red. His eyes, those same glacial eyes, met mine with fever-bright intensity. Two men stood at attention nearby, while a third, older, with silver at his temples, leaned close to Russo, speaking rapidly in that same foreign language I'd heard at the hospital. When they noticed me, the older man straightened. His accent was heavier than Russo's, his tone skeptical. "You're the nurse." Before I could answer, Russo spoke, his voice weaker but still commanding. "Leave us." "Salvatore, I don't think." "Out." One word, and they obeyed. The door shut with a final, soft click. I approached the bed cautiously. "You should be in a hospital." He gave a faint smile. "We've established that's not an option. Your wound is severely infected. You might need for antibiotics, possibly surgical debridement. Then it's fortunate you have experience with both." I stopped short. "How do you know that?" He gestured toward a manila folder on the bedside table. "Emma Catherine Shaw, 28 years old. Former medical student at Johns Hopkins. Dropped out in your final year after the death of your fiancé. Completed nursing at Colia. $137,000 in student debt. Grandmother in assisted living, Baltimore. Advancing dementia. You send her $400 a month." My stomach turned to ice. "You investigated me." I investigate everyone who comes into my life, however briefly. I yanked on a pair of latex gloves, more forcefully than necessary. You had no right. Rights? He echoed with that same shadow of amusement. Such an interesting concept. I need to examine the wound, I said coldly. He inclined his head. Proceed. I peeled back the soiled bandage and gasped. The once clean sutures were surrounded by swollen, angry flesh, oozing pus and fluid. Heat radiated from the skin. This is bad, I murmured. Very bad. He flinched slightly, the first sign of pain I'd seen from him. What happened? Did you get it wet? Exert yourself. Business required my attention. Business required? I cut myself off. You're running a fever of at least 102. The infection is spreading. Whatever business you attended to nearly killed you. He closed his eyes. Dying is an occupational hazard in my line of work. I opened my bag, pulling out alcohol swabs, sterile gauze, and a suture removal kit. I need to remove these stitches, clean out the infection, and start 4 antibiotics. Do you have any allergies? No good. This is going to hurt a lot. You take a certain pleasure in telling me that, don't you? I ignored the remark and prepared the syringe. I'm going to numb the area this time. No arguments. To my surprise, he didn't protest. I injected the anesthetic around the wound, then searched for a vein. His skin was hot and dry, dehydration evident. When did you last drink water? This morning. I inserted the 4 catheter smoothly on the first try, then improvised an 4 stand from a floor lamp. Between dehydration and infection, you're on the edge of septic shock. He watched me, eyes sharp despite his exhaustion. How serious is it? Serious enough that if you were anyone else, I'd be calling an ambulance right now. He gave a faint nod. Then I'm fortunate to have you here instead. I prepared the antibiotic. The anesthetic should be working. I'm removing the infected sutures and cleaning the area. For the next hour, I worked removing stitches, draining fluid, cleaning with antiseptic, packing the wound with antibiotic-soaked gauze. He remained silent, though sweat glistened on his brow. His jaw clenched with pain. When I finally taped down the fresh bandage, I exhaled. I'm not closing it yet. It needs to drain and breathe. I'll leave supplies so your men can change it daily. But I should come back tomorrow to check it. His hand shot out, gripping my wrist strong despite his weakness. You'll stay. My pulse leapt. What? Stay. Call in sick. I can't just. You can. And you will. His thumb traced the veins in my wrist, a quiet current passing between us. I need you here, Emma. You need a doctor. A real hospital. What I need, he said softly, is someone I can trust. You've seen my home, my security, my weakness. You're already involved deeper than you know. A chill ran through me. Are you threatening me? I'm stating facts. He winced slightly, shifting his position. There's a guest room prepared for you. My men will bring anything you require. I wanted to argue, demand to go home, but the infection was severe. He needed monitoring overnight. And beneath my professional resolve, a dangerous fascination stirred. One night, I said finally, I'll check your vitals every 2 hours. Something like relief flickered in his expression. Acceptable. I administered 4 antibiotics and a mild sedative. As the medication took hold, his eyes grew heavy, but he resisted sleep, gaze still locked on me. Why did you help me? He asked, voice slurred with exhaustion. You could have refused. Called the police. The Hippocratic Oath, I said quietly. First, do no harm. Refusing to help isn't the same as doing harm. It is to me. He smiled faintly. There's always a choice, Emma Shaw. You're simply living with the consequences of yours. His eyes drifted closed. His breathing evened out. I sat beside the bed, watching the slow rise and fall of his chest, the faint reflection of the firelight on his skin. Outside, the night deepened, and somewhere in the distance, the sound of footsteps echoed through the halls, reminding me exactly where I was. I in the home of a mafia boss. And for tonight, his nurse, his secret, his responsibility. The house grew quieter as the night deepened. From the guest room down the hall, I could still hear the faint rhythmic hum of the lake wine through the balcony doors, and underneath it, the steady beeping of the heart monitor I'd insisted on setting up beside his bed. Every instinct told me to stay awake, to stay alert. But exhaustion has a way of numbing even fear. I must have drifted off sitting in the armchair, because when I opened my eyes again, the clock read 2:47 a.m. and the fire in the master suite had burned down to amber coals. A voice broke the silence. You shouldn't sleep in that chair. I looked up. Salvatore Russo was awake, half sitting now, one hand braced against the mattress, the other hovering near the bandaged wound. The floor still dripped steadily beside him. You should be resting, I said softly, rubbing the stiffness from my neck. I've slept enough for one lifetime. His tone was calm, but the pallor under his olive skin betrayed fatigue and lingering pain. Your fever's down, I murmured, checking the monitor. 100 degrees even. That's progress. He gave a faint smile. You make it sound like victory. In medicine, sometimes surviving the night is victory. I changed his dressing under the lamplight. He watched every movement, how my fingers moved, how I avoided meeting his eyes. You were a doctor once, he said suddenly. Almost, I corrected. I left before finishing. There were reasons. James, he said, his voice lower now. Your fiancé. I froze, my gloved hands hovering above the gauze. You read that in your file. I read it, yes. But I want to hear it from you. There's nothing to tell, I said quickly, taping the bandage in place. He was shot during a robbery at the pharmacy where he worked. Wrong place, wrong time. His gaze didn't waver. And you blame yourself. I met his eyes. He bled out before the ambulance arrived. I was there. I stopped, the memory thick in my throat. Let's just say I don't talk about it. He studied me in silence. Guilt is a heavy companion. It doesn't leave easily. Neither does yours, I replied. Before I could stop myself, his eyes darkened. You assume I feel guilt. You wouldn't have kept that scar if you didn't. He looked down at the wound, at the old bullet mark nearby. Then quietly, maybe I keep them as reminders. Pain keeps the mind sharp. Or it just keeps it broken, I said. A knock came at the door, 2 soft taps. Without looking away from me, he said, Enter. Marco stepped inside, the older man from before, the one with the steel gray hair. His sharp eyes scanned me, then his employer. Everything's secure, he reported. The perimeter's doubled. Costa's people are moving. Russo's jaw tightened. They won't try anything tonight. Maybe not. But I don't like surprises. Marco glanced at me again. Especially ones that come wearing scrubs. Marco, Russo said evenly, Miss Shaw is not your concern. With respect, sir, she's everyone's concern now. You brought a stranger into the house, someone we didn't vet. Russo's reply was soft but final. I vetted her. Marco hesitated, then gave a curt nod and left, closing the door quietly behind him. When he was gone, I exhaled. You have a lot of enemies. Too many to count, Russo said. And too few friends to matter. Then why trust me? Because you didn't ask who I am, he said simply. You saw blood, not power. That's not trust, I said. That's desperation. He smiled faintly. Sometimes they're the same thing. The firelight flickered over his face, softening the sharpness, making him look almost human, almost gentle. You should get some rest, I said, standing to go. Stay, he murmured. I can't. You're afraid. Yes, I admitted. I'm in a stranger's house surrounded by armed men. Fear seems appropriate. You're not a prisoner here, Emma. Could have fooled me. I was blindfolded just to get here. That was for your protection. That's what everyone says before they take away your choices. He tilted his head, intrigued. You speak like someone who's been trapped before. I didn't answer. I just turned to gather my instruments. Then, unexpectedly, he said, You think I'm a monster. I stopped back still to him. I think you live in a world where people get hurt. And I think you've made peace with that. And you? What about me? Have you made peace with your world? I looked at him, then this man who held life and death like currency, and for a heartbeat, I saw something else beneath the armor. Weariness. Loneliness. Not yet, I said. We stood in silence, the air thick between us. Finally, I moved toward the door. I'll be in the next room if your fever spikes, I said. Emma. I turned at he was watching me again, his eyes reflecting the firelight like glass. Thank you. For what? For staying. For a long moment I couldn't breathe. Then I nodded once, quietly, and left the room. Outside, the hallway stretched into darkness, lined with quiet portraits that seemed to watch every step I took. I paused at the door to my room, listening just in time to hear the muffled sound of Marco's voice downstairs, low and sharp. Something about Costa. About retaliation. The storm, whatever it was, hadn't passed. It was only gathering strength. And I was in the middle of it now, whether I wanted to be or not. The first thing I noticed when I woke was silence, not the sterile hum of hospital machinery, but a deeper quiet that seemed to breathe with the house itself. Soft morning light filtered through gauzy curtains, casting ripples across the polished floor. For a moment I forgot where I was. Then memory hit the wound, the fever, the man in the bed down the hall who called himself Salvatore Russo. I sat up quickly. Someone had changed my clothes while I slept. I was still wearing the same jeans and sweater, but my shoes were neatly placed by the bed, and a tray had been left on the nightstand, fresh orange juice, croissants, coffee still warm. There was also a small vase with a single white lily. Before I could decide whether to eat or run, a gentle knock came at the door. Miss Shaw. The woman who stepped in looked as though she'd walked out of a 1950s film, sleek black hair in a low bun, red lipstick, immaculate posture. She carried a folded towel over one arm and a quiet, knowing smile. I'm Sophia, she said, her accent lilting somewhere between Milan and Madrid. Mr. Russo asked me to make sure you're comfortable. I'm fine, I said quickly, standing. Where's Mr. Russo? I need to check his wound. Already done by Dr. Vega, she said. I frowned. Dr. Vega? His private physician. He arrived early this morning. Sophia began arranging fresh towels on the dresser with calm precision. Mr. Russo insisted you rest. He said you were, how did he put it? Too stubborn to know when to stop. I exhaled, uncertain whether to be flattered or furious. How is he? The fever has broken. He is resting. You did well, Miss Shaw. I turned toward the window. The view stretched across rolling gardens to a lake fringed with willows and marble statues. The kind of beauty that made you forget how easily it could cage you. This place, I murmured. It's not what I expected. Sophia smiled faintly. It never is. Is he? I stopped, unsure how to phrase it. Dangerous? She finished for me, still smiling. To some people, yes. To others, not at all. Which am I? Sophia's eyes flicked toward me, sharp, assessing. That depends on what you decide to be. Before I could respond, a knock echoed from the hallway. The door opened without waiting for permission. Marco, he filled the doorway in his dark suit, radiating quiet authority. His expression was polite, but there was an edge beneath it, the kind forged by years of keeping men like Russo alive. "Miss Shaw," he greeted, voice gravelly. "Mr. Russo requests your company." "He's in the East Study." I hesitated. "I thought you said he was resting." Marco's mouth curved in something like irony. "He rests when he's dead. Follow me." Sophia gathered the breakfast tray and left as Marco led me through a maze of hallways lined with artwork and thick Persian rugs. Every corner seemed to have a camera, every corridor another set of eyes. When we reached the study, I stopped short. The room was a cathedral of glass and steel, wide windows overlooking the lake, bookshelves towering to the ceiling, and a massive walnut desk cluttered with papers, maps, and a half-finished glass of whiskey. Russo stood near the window, one hand in his pocket, the other loosely bandaged, the faint pallor of illness still clinging to him. "You shouldn't be up," I said before I could stop myself. He turned, his eyes catching the light. "Good morning to you too. Your infection isn't healed. You need rest, fluids." "I've had enough rest," he interrupted gently. "There's work to do." He gestured toward a chair opposite his desk. "Sit." I didn't. "If you think you can jump straight back into whatever this is, you'll end up back in bed with a fever that could kill you." He regarded me quietly, then smiled. "You worry too much. I'm a nurse. It's literally my job." That earned a low chuckle. "Then consider this my first act of defiance as your patient." Marco cleared his throat. "We have business, Salvatore." Russo nodded, motioning toward a digital map displayed on the desk tablet. "Emma, do you know what this is?" I stepped closer. It was a detailed layout of the city, red markers scattered across industrial zones and waterfront properties. "No," I said slowly. "Should I? These are supply routes. Each one used to belong to my family. Now someone else believes they can take them." "Costa," Marco added. "The name from last night's whispers." I frowned. "And this affects me how?" "It doesn't," Russo said simply. "But I don't like loose ends. You treated me. You know my name. You've seen my house. That makes you a part of my world, whether you intend it to be or not." "That's not fair," I said quietly. "Fairness," he said, leaning against the desk, "is a luxury people like me can't afford." He picked up a folder and handed it to me. I opened it and froze. My landlord's name. My hospital supervisor. Even the small private care home where my grandmother stayed, all neatly highlighted, with payment receipts and new account balances. "I took care of a few inconveniences," he said softly. "Your rent. Your grandmother's care. 6 months paid in full." I looked up at him, heat rising in my face. "You had no right." He met my gaze evenly. "I had every right. You saved my life. I didn't ask for anything in return. And yet," he said, "you needed it." Marco stood quietly by the door, arms folded. He didn't look surprised. This clearly was routine. I slammed the folder shut. "This isn't generosity. It's control." Russo's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "Maybe both. I want to go home." "Soon," he said. "When it's safe." "Safe from what?" He turned back toward the window. "From the world outside this house. You don't understand what you walked into, Emma." "Then explain it to me." He was silent for a long time. Then quietly, "I run an organization that operates on loyalty and precision. When either is broken, people die. Someone tried to end me last week. You saw the result. Until I find out who, no one leaves." Not even you. The words settled like lead. So I'm a prisoner. He looked back at me, expression unreadable. A guest. For now. My pulse quickened. That's not how guests are treated. He approached slowly, every movement deliberate. You have my protection, my resources, my trust. Don't mistake caution for cruelty. I took a step back. And if I still want to leave? His answer was soft, almost regretful. Then I would have to stop you. Marco shifted slightly, eyes narrowing, the silence between us stretched tight as a wire. Finally I grabbed my bag. Then I'll check your wound and be done. Russo inclined his head. As you wish. I worked in silence, disinfecting, redressing, avoiding his gaze. The infection had improved, the tissue cleaner. When I finished, I spoke without looking up. You'll be fine if you rest. Take the antibiotics as prescribed. I'll leave a supply. He smiled faintly. You're not going anywhere, Emma. I don't belong here. He said nothing, just turned toward the window again. The sunlight catching the line of his jaw. Marco opened the door. Sophia will show you to the gardens. It's safer to get air inside the perimeter. The perimeter, I repeated. Right. As I stepped outside, the morning light seemed too bright, too clean for what I just heard. The manicured garden stretched wide, fountains whispering, flowers blooming in perfect symmetry. It was beautiful that it was also a cage. Sophia met me near the marble path, her hands folded neatly. How was the patient? She asked lightly. Restless. Controlling. Infuriating. She smiled as though that were the most ordinary answer in the world. Then he must be feeling better. I laughed, a bitter sound in the sunlight from somewhere behind the glass. I could feel his eyes on me. Watching. Calculating. And in that moment I realized the wound I'd stitched wasn't the only one binding me to him. By late afternoon, the calm veneer of the estate began to fracture. The air itself felt charged like static before a storm. Even the guards, usually statues in black suits, moved with an edge of unease. I was in the medical wing, organizing supplies, when Marco appeared at the doorway. His jaw was clenched, his tone clipped. Miss Shaw, come with me. Now. Something in his voice made me drop the gauze I was holding. Is Mr. Russo all right? Come. He led me down the corridor, past the great hall, into a side chamber filled with surveillance monitors. I froze when I saw my medical bag, the same one I'd packed from my apartment, lying open on the table. Inside, beneath the bandages and sterile syringes, was a small black device with a blinking red light. Russo stood beside it, expression carved from stone. The bandage at his side peeked from under a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. The calm in his face was the kind that came after rage, not before it. He didn't raise his voice. Would you like to explain this? My throat went dry. I don't know what that is. It's a transmitter, Marco said coldly. A locator. Hidden inside your kit. That's impossible, I said. I packed that myself. Russo's eyes didn't move from mine. Did you leave it unattended at any point? I tried to think. The night before, I'd run home, packed the bag in 10 frantic minutes. No. Unless someone at the hospital. Mercy, General, he murmured. That would be Costa's easiest point of entry. I blinked. Costa? The same man from the map. Russo nodded slowly. He's been looking for an opening. It seems he found one. Marco leaned over the table, voice low but edged with anger. You brought a tracker into this house. You could have gotten him killed. I didn't know. My voice shook. I swear I didn't know. Russo lifted a hand, silencing him. Enough. He picked up the transmitter, rolling it between his fingers. The red light blinked once more before he crushed it in his palm. The plastic cracked under the pressure. "Signal's dead," he said. "But they already know where we are." Marco cursed softly in Italian. "We move now. I'll double the perimeter." "Triple it," Russo said. "And call Luca. I want every man awake and armed." Marco nodded and left, his steps quick and heavy. When the door closed, Russo turned back to me. His tone softened, but only slightly. "You understand what this means, don't you? That someone's after you," I whispered. He stepped closer. "After us. You're part of this now, whether you like it or not." "No," I said, backing away. "This isn't my world. I'm just a nurse. I was just trying to help you." "You did help me," he said quietly. "And now that help comes at a price." I shook my head. "You can't keep me here." "I can't let you leave," he said simply. "Not until this is over." Something flickered in his eyes, not cruelty, but conviction. The look of a man who'd buried too many people to take chances. I pressed a hand to my forehead. "How long do you think you can keep living like this? Every door locked, every person a potential enemy." He looked past me, out the window where dusk was beginning to bleed into night. "As long as it takes." The room buzzed with movement. Men appeared in the hallway, armed and silent. Orders were murmured into earpieces. The estate transformed from sanctuary to fortress. I followed Russo to the main hall. He moved slower than usual, still healing, but there was no hesitation in his stride. "Costa won't attack head-on," he said. "He'll probe, test, wait for weakness. But I don't give second chances." "This is insane," I said. "You're talking about a war." He turned to me, eyes sharp. "This is a war." We reached a side balcony that overlooked the courtyard. 200 men stood assembled below, their presence both terrifying and strangely disciplined. Vehicles lined the drive, engines idling. Russo placed both hands on the railing, speaking to no one and everyone. "They think we're cornered," he said. "They think I'm weak." He turned, his voice rising, cold and clear as glass. "We show them tonight that Russo blood doesn't run. It burns." The men below erupted into movement, spreading to assigned positions. I stood frozen beside him, the gravity of it all pressing down like air before thunder. "You're hurt," I said softly. "You should be in bed." He smiled faintly. "I heal fast. That's not how medicine works." He looked at me then, the faintest glint of humor or perhaps admiration in his eyes. "That's not how my world works." Marco reappeared with a tablet. The Costa compound confirmed movement. 3 SUVs, leaving the docks 15 minutes ago. Russo's expression hardened. "They're testing response time. Send the southern team." Marco hesitated. "You sure? That puts them directly in the line." I said, "Send them." "Yes, sir." When Marco left again, Russo turned toward me. "You should stay in the East Wing. It's the most secure part of the house. Sophia will bring food and whatever you need." "What if they come here?" "They won't," he said simply. "Not while I'm alive." He reached out, brushing his fingers lightly against my arm. It wasn't possessive, more like reassurance or maybe apology. "I never wanted you in this," he said quietly. "But sometimes fate doesn't ask permission." For the first time, I saw something raw beneath the armor, a man who'd been forced to become what he was. "I'll stay," I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. "For medical observation." He smiled faintly. "Of course." Outside, thunder rolled across the lake. But it wasn't weather, it was engines, movement, the distant roar of men preparing for battle from the upper window. I watched headlights snake through the gates, one after another, disappearing into the dark. The reflection of firelight flickered in Russo's eyes as he watched beside me, calm amid chaos. Whatever storm was coming, it had already begun. And for the first time, I realized that my life before this, the tired shifts, the empty apartment, the quiet grief, had already started to fade like a half-remembered dream. This was a different world now, and I was inside it. The night came heavy and restless. The estate pulsed with a quiet tension guard stationed at every corner. Radios whispering in coded fragments. From my room, I could see the lake glimmering faintly under a bruised sky, its surface disturbed by distant ripples of wind. I hadn't seen Russo since the afternoon, but the echo of his voice still lingered in my mind. You're part of this now, whether you like it or not. I told myself to stay detached, to remember I was only a nurse, an outsider accidentally caught in a world of secrets and violence. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw him standing on the balcony, giving orders with that deadly calm, and somewhere deep inside, fear was no longer the only thing I felt. A soft knock broke my thoughts. "Come in," I said. The door opened. It was Marco, his expression grave. "Mr. Russo requests you in the study." My pulse quickened. Is he hurt again? No. The meeting with Costa is over. He wants to see you. He turned and walked away before I could ask anything more. I followed the dim hallways, my footsteps echoing off marble. When I entered the study, the fire was lit again, casting amber light across the room. Salvatore Russo stood by the window, jacket off, shirt sleeves rolled, a half-empty glass of whiskey beside him. "You're awake," he said without turning. "Hard not to be, considering your house sounds like a fortress." He chuckled softly. "Old habits die hard." I approached cautiously. "Marco said you met with Costa." "I did." He turned then, the faintest smirk tugging at his lips. "And he accepted my terms." "What kind of terms?" "The kind that end bloodshed temporarily." There was something weary in the way he said it. The lines at the corners of his eyes looked deeper tonight. "So it's over?" "For now." He looked at me, his gaze searching. "You should be pleased. It means you can go home soon." The words hit harder than I expected. Home. The idea felt distant now, unreal. "I suppose that's good news," I said quietly. "You don't sound convinced." "I'm just tired," I lied. He set down the glass and moved closer, slow and deliberate, until he was standing only a few feet away. "You've been here long enough to see what I am. And yet you're still here." "You didn't give me much of a choice," I replied, forcing steadiness into my voice. "There's always a choice, Emma." "Is that what you tell yourself?" He smiled faintly. "Sometimes it's what I tell others to feel less alone." Something in me softened, though I tried to hide it. "You look worse than you did this morning," I said, stepping closer. "You shouldn't even be on your feet." "Doctor's orders again?" "Someone has to keep you alive long enough to learn humility." He laughed quietly, a sound rare enough to disarm me. I reached for the edge of his bandage, gently peeling it back. The wound looked better, but his skin was still warm. "Fever's mild," I said. "But you need rest. Real rest. Rest is for men who can afford to stop." "Maybe that's your problem," I murmured. His hand came up suddenly, catching mine as I adjusted the gauze. "You should stop underestimating me." I froze. His grip wasn't rough, it was steady, deliberate. "And you?" I said, meeting his eyes. "Should stop thinking you can control everything around you." The corner of his mouth curved upward. "Including you?" "I'm not part of your empire, Mr. Russo." His voice lowered. "Then what are you, Emma?" For a moment, the only sound was the fire. The air between us felt charged, fragile. "I'm just someone who patched you up," I said finally. He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the faint scent of whiskey and clean soap beneath it. "You're more than that. You walked into my world and didn't flinch. Do you know how rare that is?" "I didn't have a choice," I said again, but my voice was quieter now. He tilted his head, studying me. "Maybe you did. Maybe you just didn't realize it. I opened my mouth to protest, but he was already leaning in, his voice barely above a whisper. You see people as they could be, not as they are. That's dangerous. So is trusting someone like you, I whispered back. I never asked for your trust, he said. Only your truth. What truth? The one you hide from yourself. His words hung there sharp, unyielding. And before I could pull away, his lips brushed mine. It wasn't forceful or rushed. It was slow, deliberate, a collision of two people who had spent too long pretending they were untouched by the fire around them. My breath caught. And for one dizzying moment, I let it happen, then reality crashed back. I stepped away, heart racing. That was a mistake. Maybe, he said quietly, but not one I regret. I stared at him, anger and confusion warring inside me. You think you can just take whatever you want. He didn't move closer this time. I don't take what isn't freely given. I turned toward the door. This changes nothing. He nodded slowly. Then let's pretend it never happened. But as I reached for the handle, he spoke again, his voice low, almost tender. Emma, you see the man I am. And yet you're still here. That means something. Don't read meaning into survival, I said without turning back. You call it survival, he murmured. I call it fate. I walked out before he could say anything else, the echo of his words following me down the hallway like a shadow. In my room, I sank onto the bed, pressing my trembling hands against my face. Outside, engines hummed faintly in the distance, the remnants of the Costa convoy retreating into the dark. The war, for now, was over. But inside me, something else had begun, something far more dangerous than bullets or betrayal. I had crossed a line. And there was no going back. Morning came like the slow fade of a fever dream. The storm had passed, or at least the part of it that roared outside the walls. Inside, the house was eerily still. No more hurried footsteps. No more coded whispers through radios. Only silence, broken by the occasional chirp of birds returning to the garden after a sleepless night. I stood by the window, watching the first light touch the lake. For the first time in days it looked calm. But calm in Russo's world was never peace, it was only the moment before another reckoning. A soft knock at the door. Come in. Marco entered, expression unreadable. Mr. Russo will see you now. I hesitated. Is he all right? He's alive, Marco said simply. That's more than I can say for some. Something in his voice made me shiver. I followed him through the corridor to Russo's private study, a room I'd begun to recognize as the heart of the house. This time the air was different. No guards. No maps. Just Russo sitting behind his desk, a decanter of whiskey half empty beside him. He looked up as I entered. His bandage was gone, replaced by a faint scar beneath the open collar of his shirt. His face was pale but calm, almost serene. Costa's people pulled back, he said quietly. The territory's ours again. So it's over? He smiled faintly. As over as these things ever get. I approached the desk. You should still be resting. I've been resting for years, Emma. Last night reminded me what I'm made of. He gestured toward the chair across from him. Sit. I sat, feeling the distance between us. A desk, a world, a lifetime of choices. He poured whiskey into 2 glasses, slid one toward me. Drink. I don't think it's doctor approved. I don't think you're my doctor anymore. I didn't touch the glass. Why am I here, Salvatore? He studied me for a long moment, then said, Because you deserve to know who you've been saving. He leaned back, gaze distant. My father built this empire from nothing: smuggling, gambling, protection. When I was 17, the Costa family tried to erase us. They burned our home. My mother died that night. My father followed 2 years later, not from bullets, but from grief. I took everything back with blood and fire. His voice didn't waver. It was too steady, the tone of a man long past pain. And since then? I asked quietly. I kept my word. No one touches what's mine. Not my people, not my family, not what I love. He paused, a silence that felt deliberate. And what exactly is it that you love, Mr. Russo? His eyes met mine, sharp and unwavering. Maybe I haven't decided yet. I stood. If this is your way of keeping me here, it won't work. I'm not part of your world. He rose too, closing the space between us in 2 measured steps. You already are. You crossed that line the moment you stepped into my blood. I shook my head. No. I crossed it when you forced me into your house. When you made me your secret. You were never my secret, he said softly. You were the only honest thing in a dishonest life. For a heartbeat, neither of us spoke. The air between us was heavy with everything unsaid, fear, longing, defiance. Finally, he reached into a drawer and slid a sealed envelope across the desk. What's this? I asked. Freedom, he said. The car outside will take you wherever you want. The driver has instructions not to stop until you're safe. I frowned, not touching it. Just like that? You're letting me go. I don't keep what wants to leave. And if I do leave, then you'll forget this place. Forget me. His voice faltered just once. And if anyone ever asks who saved you, tell them it was a man who didn't deserve saving. I swallowed hard. And if I don't leave? He exhaled slowly. Then you stay knowing what I am, what I've done, and what that makes you by my side. I picked up the envelope. It was heavier than it looked. I'll think about it, I said. He nodded once. You'll know your answer by sunrise. The drive back to the city felt endless. I stared out the tinted window, watching trees blur into shadow. My apartment looked smaller than I remembered, emptier somehow. I placed the envelope on the table beside the $2,500 still untouched from that first night. When I opened it, I found a short note in his handwriting. There's a world built on fear and another built on mercy. You walk between them. Choose carefully which one you call home. Beneath the note, a black phone identical to the one he'd given me before. I stared at it for hours, the city outside dissolving into neon and FOBY midnight. I'd packed a small bag. When the phone rang, I didn't hesitate this time. His voice was calm, steady, familiar. Have you decided? I looked at the reflection of my own face in the window, pale, uncertain, alive in a way I hadn't been in years. I have conditions, I said. He chuckled softly. Of course you do. I don't give up my work. I don't live in shadows. And I don't take orders. There was a pause, then the faint sound of his breath through the line. Then come home, Emma, he said. We'll rewrite the rules together. The line went dead, but his words stayed outside. A black SUV waited at the curb, headlights cutting through the night. I locked my apartment door behind me, not in fear this time, but finality. The city lights flickered across the windshield as I stepped inside. The engine started. The world I'd known faded in the rearview mirror. Ahead, somewhere beyond the trees, the lake would be waiting, still, silver, and endless, and in its reflection, perhaps, a second chance or a lifetime's mistake, but it would be mine. Which moment in this story made your heartacre believe in love again? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more passionate, emotional stories from Desire Tales.